Most men believe attraction is about looks. They think it's about having the perfect jawline, the perfect body, the perfect car, or the perfect bank account. But if you study human behavior long enough, you discover something fascinating. Some men walk into a room and instantly command attention without saying much. Others have all the status symbols in the world and somehow remain invisible. Why? Because attraction isn't primarily visual, it's psychological. And among all the traits that influence attraction, there is one skill that consistently separates unforgettable men from forgettable ones. A skill so rare that when people encounter it, they feel its impact immediately. That skill is emotional certainty, not confidence, not arrogance, not dominance. Emotional certainty. And understanding the difference could completely transform the way people respond to you. Most men are emotional weather vanes. Their mood changes depending on who approves of them. A compliment makes them feel powerful. A criticism destroys their confidence. A text message determines whether they have a good day or a bad one. Their emotional state is constantly controlled by external events. The human brain notices this instantly. Why? Because people unconsciously evaluate whether someone is a source of stability or a source of stress. Research in social psychology suggests that humans naturally gravitate toward individuals who display emotional consistency under pressure. The brain interprets emotional steadiness as a signal of competence and reliability. In ancient environments, emotional stability often indicated survival value. If danger appeared, the calm person was more likely to make effective decisions. Thousands of years later, our brains still respond to that signal. This is why emotional certainty creates such a powerful attraction effect. A man with emotional certainty doesn't panic when things don't go his way. He doesn't become needy when someone pulls away. He doesn't chase validation. Most men spend years chasing confidence. They believe confidence is the secret ingredient behind attraction. The deeper voice, the stronger handshake, the perfect body, the expensive watch, the carefully crafted image. But what if nearly everything you've been taught about attraction is incomplete? What if the quality that truly captures attention isn't confidence at all? Psychologists have spent decades studying why certain individuals naturally attract others. The results reveal something surprising. People are not simply drawn to confidence. They are drawn to emotional certainty. And the difference between the two is enormous. Confidence is often tied to performance. A man feels confident because he succeeds, because he wins, because people praise him, because circumstances are favorable. But emotional certainty exists even when everything falls apart. It remains standing after rejection. It survives criticism. It survives failure. It survives loss. And the human brain notices this difference immediately. Researchers studying social perception have repeatedly found that people unconsciously evaluate emotional stability within seconds of meeting someone. Long before logic gets involved, long before words matter, the brain is already asking one question. Is this person stable, or are they unstable? Because for thousands of years, survival depended on answering that question correctly. Imagine living 10,000 years ago. A storm is approaching, food is running out, danger is everywhere. One man panics, his breathing accelerates, his decisions become reckless. Fear controls him. Another man remains calm. He assesses the situation. He thinks clearly. He acts deliberately. Which person would you trust with your survival? Your brain still carries the answer. Even today, modern neuroscience shows that humans are extraordinarily sensitive to emotional signals. Researchers have identified specialized brain systems that constantly monitor facial expressions, vocal tone, body language, and emotional reactions. This process happens automatically, without conscious awareness. People don't simply listen to your words. Their nervous systems are reading your emotional state every second. And here's the shocking part. Studies suggest that emotions spread between people almost like a virus. Scientists call this emotional contagion. When someone is anxious, stress hormones can increase in those around them. When someone is calm, the opposite can occur. Their calmness becomes contagious. Think about that. Your emotional state is affecting every room you enter. Whether you realize it or not, a man with emotional certainty becomes a source of psychological safety. And safety is one of the most powerful attraction triggers in existence. Not safety from physical danger, safety from emotional chaos. Because the modern world is overflowing with uncertainty, stress levels are climbing globally, Millions struggle with anxiety every day. Many people feel emotionally exhausted before breakfast. Their nervous systems never fully relax. Now imagine meeting someone who feels different. Someone whose emotional state doesn't swing wildly with every inconvenience. Someone who doesn't crumble under pressure. Someone who remains grounded when others panic. The contrast is impossible to ignore. Research into stress physiology reveals something fascinating. When people encounter calm and emotionally regulated individuals, their own nervous systems often begin to regulate as well. Heart rate can stabilize. Stress responses can decrease. The body literally responds to emotional stability. This means attraction isn't just happening in the mind, it's happening inside the body, and most people never realize it. This is why emotional certainty feels magnetic. It creates an experience, not an impression. Many men mistakenly believe attraction comes from proving value, so they spend years performing, trying to appear important, trying to appear dominant, trying to appear impressive, but performance creates pressure. Pressure creates anxiety, and anxiety leaks through behavior. People can sense it, maybe not consciously, but subconsciously. The human brain evolved to detect emotional inconsistencies. When words say one thing, but emotions say another, people trust emotions. Every time, that's why fake confidence eventually collapses. Because confidence built on approval is fragile. The moment approval disappears, so does confidence. The moment criticism appears, confidence shakes. The moment rejection happens, confidence cracks. Emotional certainty operates differently. It does not depend on outcomes. It does not depend on applause. It does not depend on validation. Its source comes from within, and because it comes from within, it becomes incredibly difficult to destroy. Consider some of the most respected individuals throughout history. Not necessarily the loudest. Not necessarily the strongest. Not necessarily the wealthiest. What made them unforgettable was their composure under pressure, their ability to remain centered when circumstances became overwhelming. History remembers people who stayed steady when others lost control. Because emotional certainty communicates something powerful. It communicates trust, and trust is the foundation of attraction. Without trust, attraction struggles to survive. With trust, attraction deepens. Scientists studying leadership have repeatedly found that emotional stability predicts influence more effectively than many traditional traits. People naturally follow those who remain composed during uncertainty. Why? Because certainty reduces fear, and humans are constantly searching for certainty. Now here's where things become even more interesting. The brain rewards emotional certainty, not only in others, but within yourself. When you learn to regulate emotions instead of reacting impulsively, your stress response becomes healthier. Research links chronic emotional reactivity to elevated cortisol levels. Excessive cortisol has been associated with sleep disruption, weakened immunity, weight gain, memory problems, and increased health risks over time. In other words, emotional chaos doesn't just affect your relationships, it affects your body, your brain, your long-term health. Every emotional overreaction carries a physiological cost. Every moment of chronic stress leaves a biological footprint. This means emotional certainty is more than an attraction skill. It's a life skill, a health skill, a performance skill, a survival skill. And perhaps that's why it remains so attractive. Because deep down, humans recognize its value. Not intellectually, instinctively. They feel it. When a man walks into a room completely comfortable with himself, people notice. When criticism doesn't shake him, people notice. When rejection doesn't define him, people notice. When pressure doesn't control him, people notice. And often they can't explain why. They simply describe him as different, magnetic, compelling, powerful. But what they're really noticing is emotional certainty. The rare ability to remain emotionally grounded in a world that constantly pulls people off. Balance. And here's the truth most men never hear. You don't build emotional certainty by avoiding challenges. You build it by facing them. Every difficult conversation, every uncomfortable moment, every rejection, every setback, every failure. These experiences become training. They teach your nervous system that survival is possible. They teach your mind that discomfort is temporary. They teach your emotions that panic is optional. Over time, certainty begins to emerge. Not because life becomes easier, but because you stop needing life to be easy. And when that transformation happens, something remarkable occurs. People feel it, before you speak, before you explain yourself, before you try to impress anyone. Your presence begins communicating a message that says, I can handle whatever comes next. And in a world overflowing with uncertainty, fear, stress, and emotional instability, that message is extraordinarily rare. Rare enough to be unforgettable, rare enough to be magnetic, rare enough to make people wonder what it is about you that feels different. And the answer isn't confidence, it's something much deeper, something stronger, something that cannot be bought, borrowed, or faked. Emotional certainty, the invisible force that makes a man truly attractive long before he ever says a word. There is a silent addiction affecting millions of men today. An addiction so common that most people don't even recognize it. It doesn't come in a bottle. It doesn't come in a pill. It doesn't come from a dealer standing on a street corner. Yet it controls decisions, destroys confidence, increases anxiety, and quietly steals personal power every single day. That addiction is the need for external validation, the need to be liked, the need to be approved of, the need to hear someone say, "You're enough." And the frightening truth is that many men spend their entire lives chasing it without realizing the damage it's causing. From childhood, most people are conditioned to seek approval. Good grades earn praise. Good behavior earns rewards. Following the rules earns acceptance. Over time, the brain learns a dangerous lesson. Your value comes from what others think of you. At first, this seems harmless. But years later, that lesson becomes a psychological prison. Because once your self-worth depends on external approval, you hand control of your emotional state to other people. And the moment someone else controls your emotional state, they control you. Psychologists have spent decades studying self-esteem and human motivation. Again and again, research points to the same conclusion. People whose self-worth depends heavily on external validation experience higher levels of anxiety, emotional instability, stress, and depression. Think about what that means. Every compliment becomes a temporary high. Every criticism becomes a threat. Every rejection becomes a crisis. And every interaction becomes a hidden test of worthiness. The brain begins living in a constant state of evaluation. Am I good enough? Do they like me? Did I say the right thing? What are they thinking about me? This endless mental surveillance is exhausting. Neuroscientists have found that social rejection activates many of the same brain regions associated with physical pain. In other words, your brain often interprets rejection as a genuine threat, not a metaphorical one, a biological one. That uncomfortable feeling after being ignored, that sinking feeling after criticism, that emotional punch after rejection. Your nervous system experiences it as something real, something dangerous, something that demands attention. And social media has amplified this problem to unprecedented levels. For most of human history, people sought approval from small communities. Today, approval is measured instantly. Likes, views, comments, followers. Numbers become emotional currency. Every notification delivers a tiny hit of dopamine, the same neurotransmitter involved in reward-seeking behavior. Researchers studying digital behavior have repeatedly observed how social validation activates the brain's reward circuitry. The result is a cycle that resembles addiction. You seek approval, you receive approval, you feel temporary relief. Then you need more, and more, and more. Because external validation never creates lasting security. It only creates temporary comfort. And temporary comfort always fades. This is why some men appear successful on the outside but feel empty on the inside. They have achievements, status, recognition, yet they remain deeply insecure. Because no amount of external praise can permanently solve an internal problem. The human mind quickly adapts to approval. Yesterday's compliment becomes today's expectation. Today's success becomes tomorrow's minimum standard. The finish line keeps moving, and the chase never ends. Now imagine living this way for years, constantly monitoring reactions, constantly adjusting behavior, constantly trying to become whoever others want you to be. The psychological cost is enormous. Studies suggest chronic social evaluation can increase stress responses throughout the body. Elevated stress hormones can contribute to sleep disturbances, impaired concentration, weakened immune function, and long-term health challenges. Your body keeps score. Every moment spent seeking approval carries a biological price. And perhaps the greatest cost is authenticity. Because when approval becomes your primary goal, authenticity becomes dangerous. You stop asking what you truly believe. You start asking what others want to hear. You stop expressing yourself honestly. You start managing impressions. You stop living, you start performing. The tragedy is that many people become strangers to themselves. Not because they lack identity, but because they've spent so many years chasing acceptance that they've forgotten who they are underneath it all. And here's the paradox. The harder you chase approval, the less attractive you often become. Why? Because neediness communicates dependence. Dependence communicates insecurity. And insecurity signals instability. Human beings are naturally drawn toward those who appear emotionally self-sufficient. Not because they're cold, not because they're arrogant, but because emotional independence feels powerful. Imagine two men entering a room. The first desperately wants everyone to like him. Every word is filtered through fear. Every action seeks approval. Every conversation becomes an audition. The second man enjoys connecting with people, but does not require their validation. If someone likes him, great. If someone doesn't, that's okay too. Who appears stronger? Who appears calmer? Who appears more attractive? The answer is obvious. Because freedom is attractive. And nothing creates freedom faster than releasing your dependence on approval. The most powerful shift occurs when you stop asking others to determine your worth. Instead of measuring yourself by applause, you measure yourself by integrity. Did you keep your promises? Did you honor your values? Did you do what you said you would do? Did you grow? Did you improve? Did you act with courage when it mattered? These questions create something external validation never can. A stable identity, an identity rooted in behavior rather than opinion, an identity that survives criticism, an identity that survives rejection, an identity that survives failure. Because your value is no longer determined by outcomes, it's determined by character. And character remains even when circumstances change. Psychologists often describe this as developing an internal locus of control. People with an internal locus of control believe their actions matter more than external circumstances. Research consistently links this mindset to greater resilience, better emotional health, improved stress management, and higher life satisfaction. In simple terms, they stop waiting for the world to tell them who they are. They decide for themselves. That decision changes everything. Suddenly rejection becomes information instead of devastation. Criticism becomes feedback instead of identity. Failure becomes education instead of proof of inadequacy. The emotional charge begins disappearing. And with it comes something extraordinary. Peace. Not because life becomes easier, but because your emotional foundation becomes stronger. You no longer wake up wondering if you're enough. You no longer need constant reassurance. You no longer hand strangers the keys to your self-worth. You become your own source of validation. And that changes the way you move through the world. Your voice becomes steadier. Your decisions become clearer. Your relationships become healthier. Your confidence becomes more genuine. Because it is no longer built on applause. It is built on self-respect. And self-respect is different. Unlike approval, it cannot be given. Unlike approval, it cannot be taken away. It must be earned through your own actions. Every promise kept, every challenge faced, every fear confronted, every value honored, brick by brick, day by day, until one day something remarkable happens. You stop needing the room's approval. And ironically, that's often the moment people begin respecting you the most. Because the strongest presence in any room is rarely the person demanding attention, it's the person who doesn't need it. The person who knows who they are. The person whose value is not for sale. The person who remains grounded whether they are praised or criticized. The person who understands a truth that many spend a lifetime searching for. Your worth was never supposed to come from other people. It was always supposed to come from you. And the moment you truly understand that, you stop chasing validation. You start living with certainty. And that certainty becomes one of the most powerful forms of attraction a man can ever possess. Most men believe strength is measured by how much they can lift, how much money they can earn, how loudly they can speak, how aggressively they can dominate a room. But neuroscience tells a very different story. Some of the strongest men you'll ever meet don't look intimidating. They don't raise their voices, they don't demand attention, they don't need to prove anything, because their greatest power exists in a place most people never think to look. Their ability to control their emotions under pressure, and in a world overflowing with stress, distraction, anxiety, and emotional chaos, this may be the rarest form of strength left. Every day, millions of people lose battles they never see. Not battles against other people, battles inside their own minds. A harsh comment ruins their mood. A setback destroys their confidence. A rejection consumes their thoughts for weeks. A moment of anger causes damage that takes years to repair. And the frightening part is that most of these reactions happen automatically. Before logic arrives, before reason speaks, before awareness catches up, the human brain was not designed for the modern world. It was designed for survival. Thousands of years ago, reacting quickly to danger increased the chances of staying alive. When a predator appeared, hesitation could mean death. The brain evolved powerful alarm systems to keep humans safe. But today, those same systems often react to emails, social conflict, criticism, social media comments, financial stress, and relationship problems as if they were life-threatening emergencies. Your body cannot always tell the difference, and the consequences are staggering. When stress strikes, the brain activates the sympathetic nervous system. Heart rate rises, blood pressure increases, stress hormones flood the bloodstream, muscles tighten, breathing changes, attention narrows. The body prepares for survival. For short periods, this response is useful. But when activated repeatedly, it becomes dangerous. Research has linked chronic stress to cardiovascular disease, sleep disruption, weakened immunity, digestive problems, anxiety disorders, depression, memory impairment, and accelerated aging. Think about that. Every uncontrolled emotional reaction leaves a biological footprint. Every burst of rage, every spiral of anxiety, every episode of panic. Your body remembers. Your nervous system remembers. Your health remembers. Scientists studying stress physiology have discovered that prolonged elevations in cortisol can alter brain function over time. Areas involved in memory, decision-making, and emotional regulation may become less effective when stress becomes chronic. In simple terms, the more emotionally reactive you become, the harder it can be to think clearly. The harder it becomes to make good decisions. The harder it becomes to stay in control. And that creates a dangerous cycle. Emotional reactions produce stress. Stress weakens regulation. Weakened regulation produces more emotional reactions. Many people spend years trapped inside this invisible loop. Yet there is another path. A path walked by individuals who appear calm even when life becomes difficult. People who remain composed while others panic. People who think clearly when others become overwhelmed. People who stay grounded when everything around them feels unstable. What separates them from everyone else? Emotional regulation. The ability to experience emotions without becoming controlled by them. This doesn't mean suppressing feelings. It doesn't mean pretending not to care. It doesn't mean becoming emotionally cold. In fact, emotional regulation is the opposite of emotional suppression. Suppression pushes emotions underground. Regulation acknowledges emotions while maintaining control over behavior. That distinction changes everything. Research from psychology and neuroscience repeatedly shows that emotionally regulated individuals tend to perform better under pressure. They often make better decisions, maintain healthier relationships, experience greater resilience, and recover faster from adversity. Why? Because they create space between stimulus and response. Most people react, emotionally regulated people respond. And that small difference can alter the course of an entire life. Imagine receiving criticism. One person immediately becomes defensive. Anger takes over. The conversation escalates. Damage follows. Another person feels the same emotional reaction, the same discomfort, the same sting. But instead of reacting instantly, they pause. They observe the emotion. They allow it to exist. Then they choose their response. The external situation remains identical, but the outcome becomes completely different. This is not weakness. This is mastery. And the science behind it is fascinating. Studies involving mindfulness and emotional awareness suggest that observing emotions without immediate reaction can reduce their intensity. The simple act of naming an emotion may decrease activity in brain regions associated with emotional threat, while increasing activity in regions associated with self-control. In other words, awareness changes the brain. The moment you notice an emotion, you begin gaining influence over it. Without awareness, emotions drive behavior. With awareness, behavior becomes a choice. And choice is power. Consider how many lives have been altered by a single emotional reaction. A relationship destroyed by one moment of anger, a career damaged by one impulsive decision, a friendship ended by one uncontrolled outburst, a future changed by one moment of emotional weakness. The cost of poor emotional regulation is often invisible until the damage has already been done. But the rewards of emotional mastery are equally profound. People trust emotionally regulated individuals. They feel safer around them, more comfortable around them, more willing to follow them. Researchers studying leadership consistently find that emotional self-control is one of the strongest predictors of influence. Not charisma, not intelligence, not status, self-control, because people instinctively look for stability, especially during uncertainty. Imagine standing in a crowded room during a crisis. Everyone is anxious. Everyone is looking around for answers. Who naturally attracts attention? Usually not the loudest person. Usually not the most dramatic person. Usually not the most emotional person. People gravitate toward the individual who remains calm, the one whose emotions are not controlling them, the one whose mind remains clear, the one whose presence communicates safety. This reaction is deeply rooted in human psychology. For thousands of years, emotionally stable individuals increased group survival. Our brains still respond to those signals today. And perhaps this explains why emotional regulation is so attractive. Not merely in romantic relationships, in every area of life. Because emotional stability signals competence, reliability, strength, trustworthiness, qualities humans naturally seek. Now here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people wait for life to become less stressful before trying to become calm. But calmness doesn't come from easier circumstances. It comes from training. The same way muscles grow through resistance, emotional regulation grows through challenge. Every difficult conversation becomes training. Every disappointment becomes training. Every rejection becomes training. Every stressful situation becomes training. If you choose to use it, the goal is not to eliminate emotion. The goal is to increase your capacity to handle it, to feel anger without becoming destructive, to feel fear without becoming paralyzed, to feel sadness without losing hope, to feel pressure without losing control. Because emotions themselves are not the enemy, unconscious reactions are. And once you understand this, everything begins to change. You stop seeing emotions as commands. You start seeing them as information. Information that can guide you, but no longer control you. The transformation is subtle at first. You pause more often, react less frequently, think more clearly, sleep more peacefully, handle stress more effectively. And gradually, your entire presence changes. People notice, not because you become louder, but because you become steadier. Not because you become more intimidating, but because you become more grounded. Not because you dominate others, but because you finally learn to master yourself. And in a world where countless people are controlled by fear, anger, anxiety, impulse, and stress, self-mastery stands out immediately. Because the strongest man in the room is rarely the one who controls everyone else. It's the one who controls himself, the one who remains calm when others panic, the one who remains focused when others become distracted, the one who remains disciplined when others surrender to emotion, the one who understands a truth that changes everything. Real power is not found in controlling the world around you. Real power is found in controlling what happens within you. And once you achieve that level of emotional regulation, you possess a strength that no circumstance, no criticism, no rejection, and no challenge can easily take away.